Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel at War update, and today is the 43rd day since the Islamist terror groups from the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip launched a war in Israel, perpetrating a massacre on October 7th, which culminated with thousands of casualties. As we continue to update you here from Jerusalem, let's turn now to our TV7 editor-at-large, Mr. Amir Oren. Amir, what can you tell us about the latest?
So this has been the seventh Sabbath since the war started. On the seventh day, the Lord rested, but the IDF does not. But nevertheless, it seems as if it is on a lower pitch, a bit of a lower level campaign right now, with some soldiers getting a reprieve, going on home leave for a short while before coming back to pursue the mission. And we have seen activities in the south, especially against Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and not only Hamas, in the Shifa hospital area and in other sectors, against Hezbollah in response to the fire at Israeli outposts and settlements. And in the West Bank, there has been a heightened campaign against not only Hamas, but a relatively new underground cell in the Balata refugee camp, where the IDF, along with the Israel Security Agency, or Shabak, scored a remarkable success against the leadership of this particular organization. All in all, the war continues, and obviously after a weekend hiatus, we will see early next week renewed battles.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. I think it's very important to highlight the difference between Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Since Hamas is an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood, it is indeed both facilitated, trained, it receives funding and ammunition from the Islamic Republic of Iran. Nevertheless, the directives are not directly from Tehran. They have their own decision-making to consider. They have other affiliations, including Qatar, Turkey, and some angles also have other affiliations within that organization, as opposed to Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which is funded, trained, and also directed by the Islamic Republic of Iran under the leadership of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards, most particularly, of course, Quds Force. But let's also right now turn to Colonel in Reserve, Miri Eisen, who is the director of the Institute for Counterterrorism at Reichman University. Thank you for joining us, Colonel. Could you please provide us an operational perspective as a longtime intelligence officer and part of the Israeli intelligence community? How do you currently characterize the fighting in the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip?
The Israeli Defense Forces are using all of the different types of intelligence that we can use, meaning we're inside. You can use your eyes, you can get to places, you can seek them out. You continue to use all of the other types of platforms, but the most important part at this stage is actually the friction of the fighting forces inside the Gaza Strip. We've surrounded the northern portion of the Gaza Strip in general, meaning going in, and we're closing into the urban area of Gaza City. We're already inside. Jonathan, there is no more difficult terrain or area for any kind of military to do battle than an urban area. This is a densely populated urban area. We, for so many weeks, have been telling the population to move south, move out. So the characterizing of the intelligence is to understand where are the terrorists, where have they placed their positions, where are the booby traps, where are the anti-tank weaponry, where are they trying to fight in that sense and to bring Israeli soldiers into those booby traps. At the same time, parallel, not instead, where are the hostages, where are they being held, and all of this is the above ground. At the same time, we all understand that there is the finding of the shafts that lead down into that subterranean arena, which most definitely is the one that's not just booby-trapped. It's where you're going to have the headquarters, the top echelon, and more of the hostages. And all of this mainly in the friction in the northern Gaza Strip. So when we talk about the capabilities, it's talking about gathering information, doing it carefully, trying as much as possible, not just to save human lives, to find the hostages, to try to keep the uninvolved civilians out, and to go after every single terrorist from Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, as they continue fighting.
Thank you, Colonel Eisen. It's clear indeed. Let's turn also immediately to the commander of the Israeli Air Force Task Force for Air and Missile Defense, Brigadier General in Reserve Doron Gavish. Thank you for joining us, General. I'd like to ask you also to drive from the remarks made by Colonel Eisen. How do you currently see the ongoing operation in Gaza? We saw there, of course, the Southern Command commander visiting the troops in the field in Sheba Hospital, going over the plans and seeing truly how the various methodological activities are being undertaken by the special operators in this very complex facility.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, indeed. And I think Miri said it rightly, that there is a vast intelligence effort, but of course, the main effort is being done by the IDF from the ground forces from the one end, and then the Air Force from the other end, also from the sea. We have to say, we see that the Air Force is continuously striking, continuously doing his two main missions. One of them is striking the Hamas targets. We see the tunnels are being struck. We see command posts, and this is from the one end, but then from the other end, of course, a very close support to the ground forces. And here I would like to echo what was said by Miri, that the urban fight is a very, very complex one, and this very close work between the intelligence from one hand, the ground, the forces on the ground, and then the Air Force, with let's put it this way, with opening the way from them, allowing them to go inside those very dangerous places, I would say, but with less hits, because some of the work was done by the Air Force. We see all of this working together also in the urban areas. I think it is also, of course, important to mention that we see more and more that the IDF is exposing the way of working, that the Hezbollah is working. We see that being in the hospitals, in the mosques, and lately we see it more and more in schools. This is part of their doctrine. So we continuously said that the Hamas is using the Palestinians as these human shields, but now all the evidence are coming out. We see it more and more. And so I think this is very important. And of course, we still see the Hamas capable of shooting some rockets. But what was interesting yesterday, that they shot a barrage of rockets toward Israel, but in a very close loop. This terrorist unit was intercepted by the Air Force, again closing a very, very close loop between the ground forces and the Air Force. And this is, of course, one of the outcomes of the strong control that Israel have in this area and the IDF overall.
Thank you, General Gavish. Let's turn immediately also to Washington, D.C., where we're joined by retired Brigadier General Mark Kimmett, who is the former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Political Military Affairs. Thank you for joining us, General. What could you tell us from an American perspective? Obviously, we see the various drones of CENTCOM flying overhead in various parts of the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip to try and locate, according to DoD, any signs that may lead the forces towards the hostages. There are also 9 American hostages, among others, also Irish, British, Dutch, German, and we can go on and on, unfortunately. How is this ongoing effort currently at a time when, unfortunately, not much fruit is being reaped at this stage?
Well, I think the important thing to note, Jonathan, is that not only is CENTCOM working side by side with the IDF at the tactical and perhaps operational level, there is a separate effort in the United States at the strategic level where national assets are being used to try to find the hostages. I think all of us recognize that we don't necessarily share all of our assets with each other, primarily because of tactics, techniques, and procedures and capabilities. But when Secretary Blinken says we have validated with our own assets that there was Hamas activity in the Al Shifa hospital, that indicates to me that this is being done with national assets by the United States. I know that we're providing that intelligence, but I don't think we've got Israeli officers standing side by side at some of those operation centers where this intelligence is being developed.
Thank you, General. Let's turn immediately also to Mr. Owen. Amir, I'd like to touch on a theater that is not enough discussed, that is the so-called West Bank districts of Judea, Samaria, and the Jordan Valley. Naturally, there's been an ongoing effort by the IDF in cooperation with the ISA and Border Police Special Operators in apprehending and dealing with various terror elements throughout those districts. What can you tell us about it?
Just for a moment before I answer, just to add to what General Kimmett said, look at the distance that the two nations have traveled since the U.S. Navy and NSA ship Liberty was attacked by mistake not too far from these very shores in 1967. And now the NSA and the Israeli intelligence unit 8200 are collaborating as virtual sisters. So this is quite a remarkable advance progress by both countries. Now, as for the West Bank, there are two problems. One is that several Hamas and other terror organizations tried to help the activities down south by perpetrating terror acts in Jerusalem or in Israel proper out of the West Bank, and the military and intelligence and police collaboration, which you pointed to, has successfully succeeded in a dragnet in both apprehending them, preempting, and at times in shootouts killing those terrorists. The other problem is what the administration spokespeople call settler violence against Palestinians. And because it is so detrimental to the Israeli military and diplomatic effort, one hopes that the Israeli government would find a way to take care of this particular problem too, even though it is not as severe as the Palestinian one.
Indeed. Well, it is far from severe. I had the opportunity to look at the figures and to communicate about this with both the ISA and the Border Police Special Operators number that are dealing with this file in particular. And they highlighted also following the meeting of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu with the regional council heads throughout Judea and Samaria that this is a number one priority for this territories, and obviously there's a lot of efforts being done in this matter. Colonel Eisen, would you like to also elaborate on this?
When we're talking about the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, the Jordan Valley, let me for a moment put on my counterterrorism or terrorism hat, and let's talk about the Palestinians there. I'm going to say something that's going to make people cringe, but to a large degree, the Hamas terror mega attack on October 7th was seen certainly by the younger generation inside the West Bank as being very heroic. And here we are 6 weeks in. We think about it right now as being war against Hamas in the Gaza Strip, but this is war against this horrific terror organization, Hamas, and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, that the October 7th attack was just a part of a campaign. And Israel right now, the IDF, the ISA, Israel Security Agency, are waging this war not just against Hamas in the Gaza Strip, not just where in the northern Gaza Strip we are fighting with our forces inside the Gaza Strip. It's throughout the Gaza Strip as we continue, and it's throughout the West Bank. And that's much more challenging and always has been. The relationship inside the West Bank, the complexity of the hundreds of thousands of Israelis who live there in the different Jewish communities, the settlements, of the places that you go around and as you travel inside there. So I think that it's not a question of opportunity, Jonathan, but there's no question that when we're waging war against the terror organization Hamas, it's not just in the Gaza Strip, it is also in the West Bank, in cities like Tulkarem, in Nablus in that sense. When you look at it, it's not just Hamas, it's terror elements. We're gathering weapons, capabilities, and this horrific ideology, and we're trying to get them, arrest them, or target them inside the West Bank as well.
Thank you, Colonel Eisen. I'd like actually to refer the next question to General Kimmett, since I'd like to hear the American perspective to this. It's been quite vocal, both behind the scenes as well in front of the scenes, about the various complexities related to Judea and Samaria. And therefore, how do you see this from an American perspective at this stage?
Well, I think there are a lot of questions, particularly in the American media, on both Gaza City and West Bank, and for that matter, what's going to happen in the South. The American media has shifted to a doubting Thomas role. They're waiting to see better evidence of what happened at El Shifa Hospital in these tunnels. All we see is a big hole. So there's questions about that. And my advice would be to show something sooner. In the West Bank, they are wondering what is happening with this vigilante justice as they see it, that there's retribution being taken out on the Palestinians by the settlers in retribution for what happened on October 7th. And the really confusing area is, what does this mean to now shift the attack to the South? The contradiction in the minds of many Americans is, wait a second, the Israelis said, move all the refugees to a humanitarian safe zone in the South. And now you're telling me you're going to be attacking that? So there are some strategic communications inconsistencies that I think that your spokesman and your military personnel need to give a better explanation to, because otherwise the view back here, particularly for the pro-Palestinian crowd, is that the war is shifting and it's becoming too brutal on the part of the Israelis.
Well, for that, to be fair, the pro-Palestinian crowd is going to regard that irrespective of what is done in the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip. And we hear the voices loud and clear coming out of this camp saying, particularly what Rashida Tlaib is saying time and again, that she's hopeful to see those kind of realities recur. And unfortunately, we cannot accept that in any way. But go ahead, General.
Well, Jonathan, I said the Palestinian groups, but I meant the Palestinian groups will exclusively say that, but they are not the only ones that are now starting to think this. The propaganda that's being perpetuated is starting to flare up on the campuses again. It started to flare up in the streets again. Indeed. So yes, you're right. The pro-Palestinian groups will never change their mind, but they are starting to change some minds on the left wing, and even perhaps in the center left.
Let's turn also to General Gavish. General, if you would like to make a remark on the shift southward. Obviously, Hamas pockets have utilized the humanitarian corridors in order to transition southward. Nevertheless, Israel cannot allow Hamas to roam free in the southern part at a time when it is remaining prone and still capable of perpetrating what occurred, the atrocities that occurred, for that matter, on October 7th.
Well, yes, this is for sure. You know, the goal of this war was stated, and of course we cannot, achieve it only on the northern part of the Gaza Strip. So it is for sure something that it's part of the plan of the long plan, but it is also being done, I think, in a very careful way, allowing the people to go to specific areas within the southern part of the Gaza Strip when they could get this humanitarian aid. So if we are saying the south, there is enough place in the south from the humanitarian aid from one side, and then from the other side, still we need to fight the Hamas. I can tell you that one of the really important thing is that we are working very close with the U.S., as we said, on the operational level. And we had a visit yesterday of General Kirilla, who is, of course, the commander of CENTCOM. And I saw even the statement saying that he is here to see how could we help Israel to defend itself in this situation. So the relations are very close, also the operational relations, and there is quite transparency between the forces. So I'm sure that in the operational level we are continuing. We are for sure there. There are some things that you can come out with them, and some that we don't. I think we should take General Kimmit remarks in consideration, because we have to show it also to the world, and not only among us, the operational people. I'm sure that this is something that is being think about, and I'm sure that this is something that would be done for sure in the area of Shifa, but also on the southern part of the Gaza Strip.
Thank you, General Kavish. Obviously, General Kimmitt's remarks will be taken seriously, and we'll relay that message to the relevant authorities. Mr. Oren, let's turn to the northern arena, which obviously has also a long web of interconnecting dots between various countries throughout the region, with the pinnacle being in the Islamic Republic of Iran. What is the current state of play, and where are things heading?
In the north, Israel is both on the defense and the offense. Defensively, of course, Israel tries to protect its troops and the remaining civilians, the residents who have not left the border communities, by taking action, sometimes preemptively, sometimes in response to anti-tank guided missile squads and mortar squads and the like. And sometimes it has larger aims in mind. And offensively, what Israel is doing is a continuation of the so-called campaign between the wars, because it is not yet a full-scale war. The Israeli Air Force, mostly the Air Force, sometimes the artillery too, is acting against assets which Hezbollah has even in other places, a bit north of the frontier, in order for Hezbollah to lack those assets when a full-scale war erupts. The two parties, for their various reasons, choose not to publicize it. But not all of the action takes place right on the border.
Thank you, Mr. Oren. Colonel Eisen, how do you see currently this sphere of Iranian influence at a time of heightened tensions?
So I'm not calling it the war in between the war anymore. I'm calling it the war of attrition. Down south is full scale. I think that we are at war up north. It's a war of attrition. It's same, similar, but different types of technologies. Hezbollah has capabilities that Hamas does not have. It is trying them all out. It is consistently using them. It has turned the border area inside the state of Israel to an area where it isn't really possible for regular civilians to live at all, and it hasn't been so for the last 6 weeks. It's a war. And so I in that sense, I think that there's a lot of undercover stuff that's going on, but overtly, Hezbollah is doing more than just playing lip service. Less than would bring out the full capabilities and wrath of the state of Israel. I wonder if it's because of Iran, as you said, if it's also, not only, certainly because of Iran, but also because Lebanon is not the Gaza Strip. The Lebanese and Hezbollah are not Hamas in the Palestinian arena. there is an additional aspect there, a point that impacts Hezbollah a bit. So this war of attrition is, let's do as much as we can without the Lebanese people getting hurt. And I'm very worried about it. I think that it can really step up a lot and bring in a lot of additional players.
Thank you, Colonel Eisen. General Gavish, your take on this, and I'd like also to refer your attention to the border area between Iraq and Jordan, where we see Hashd al-Shaabi accumulating its infrastructure, establishing and preparing for potentially also joining the war at a time in which Hezbollah would drag Israel into a full-scale conflagration.
Well, yes. First of all, we say it here all the time. We are under a full-scale war, but there is a fight going on the northern part of Israel. So I fully agree with what was just mentioned by Miri, and we saw it even in the last few hours or 24 hours that they are even trying to shoot down our UAVs. Apparently they couldn't because this was another capability that is being denied by the IDF, denied from the Hamas. They are trying to do all kinds of things, but we said it more than once that on the tactic level they are continuously, I would say, losing on those fights in the vast majority of them. And also the answer this time, and here I would refer to what Amir was mentioning, was that this battery that shot against our UAVs was destroyed. And he is not very close to the border, we should say. So this is really what is continuously going on there. We are under the full-scale war, but there is a fight which is going all the time. And going back to your question, is that we are really ready for, when we say we are ready 360 degrees, this is exactly it. We knew that it could come from the north, from the northeast, from the east, from the east-west, and from the west, from the south. Sorry. So the IDF is ready for all those options. Of course, without getting into the details now, but this is for sure something that is being already taken in consideration, and of course now more.
Thank you, General Gavish. General Kimmett, I'd like to refer this last point to you, and that is the United States continues to be subject to repeated attacks by Iranian proxies throughout the region, particularly in Iraq and Syria. Is enough being done at this stage, considering all of the various points that we already mentioned throughout our various updates in recent weeks?
Well, as we've said before, the U.S. is responding pretty vigorously to the targets inside of Syria. Syria is for lack of a better term, a non-sovereign country, so we don't worry about any responses coming from Bashar al-Assad's forces. On the other hand, we still respect Prime Minister Soudani's sovereignty over the state of Iraq. And the fact remains is if we start conducting unilateral operations, that could bring down his relatively moderate government and bring in some pro-Iranian groups like the coalition framework. So I think we are doing everything we can diplomatically to nudge Prime Minister Soudani to use his own forces. But I think everything's on the table if any of these attacks start killing American troops or American diplomats. But for now, we're going to let the Iraqis take care of it inside of Iraq.
Thank you, General Kimmett. Well, this is all the time that we have for today. I'd like to thank Mr. Oren, Colonel Eisen, General Gavish, and General Kimmett for taking out of your times to update us on the latest. I'd like also to thank all of you at home and to take this opportunity also to highlight once more that TV7 Israel is a donation-based ministry. Therefore, if you're blessed by our productions, I'd like to encourage you to donate by going to our website at www.tv7israelnews.com, where it is possible to do so. Until our next update from here in Jerusalem, Shalom.
name is I used to be Deputy National Security Advisor to the Government of Israel, currently Vice President of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security, a think tank, and the editor of the Jerusalem Strategic Tribune. For the last few years, I've been a regular panelist for TV7, a fantastic opportunity to bring deep and analytical perspectives to the debate over regional affairs, Israeli affairs, international affairs, in the company of some of the best minds in Israel.